The silent music exodus, observer. Keyless adjusted the neural interface, connecting his consciousness to the monitoring station that orbited beyond Earth's moon. For 73 cycles he had watched this peculiar blue world with fascination and growing concern. The VRN were patient by nature, their elongated lifespans allowing them to observe civilizations across centuries without the impatience that plagued younger species. Keyless had witnessed the rise and fall of 6 different cultures in his 400 years of service to the Galactic Observatory Commission. None had been quite as unpredictable as humanity. The observation post was a marvel of technology, invisible to primitive sensors and equipped with instruments that could detect the electromagnetic whisper of a single communication device from thousands of kilometers away. Keyless shared this lonely vigil with 3 others. Mira, a methodical taline, whose crystalline form refracted light in mesmerizing patterns. Jorith, a hulking Crothan warrior assigned for security. Despite the remote likelihood of discovery, invest in artificial intelligence substrate that processed the endless stream of data flowing from Earth's surface. The monitoring protocols were clear and had been established millennia ago by the Convergence Council, the governing body that united 400 sentient species across 12 galactic arms. Young civilizations were to be observed, cataloged, and evaluated only when they demonstrated sufficient technological advancement and social stability would they receive an invitation to join the greater galactic community. Until then they remained quarantined, protected from knowledge that might accelerate their development in dangerous directions. Humanity had been under observation for 187 years. In that time, Keyless had watched them stumble through wars and environmental crises, witnessed their fumbling attempts to reach their own moon, and recorded their chaotic transmissions that filled the electromagnetic spectrum with noise. They were violent and divided, brilliant and foolish in equal measure. The consensus among the observation team was that humanity would require at least another 2 centuries before they were ready for contact. That assessment changed in a single night. Keyless was reviewing atmospheric composition data when Vest interrupted with an alert that made his heart analog skip. The artificial intelligence spoke in its characteristically calm voice, but Keyless detected an undertone of uncertainty that should have been impossible for a purely logical entity. Observer Keyless, I am detecting a significant anomaly in global communication patterns. All human transmissions have ceased. Simultaneously, Keyless pulled his consciousness from the atmospheric data and focused on the communication monitors. The display showed flat lines where there should have been the constant chatter of billions of voices. Radio silence blanketed the entire planet. Technical malfunction, Keyless asked, though he already knew the answer. Negative, all monitoring equipment is functioning within normal parameters. The silence originates from Earth itself. Mirror materialized beside him, her crystalline body catching the light from the monitors. This is unprecedented. Even during their largest conflict, communications never ceased completely. Jorith stomped across the observation deck, his massive frame causing the floor to vibrate with each step. Could it be an attack? Perhaps. Another species has violated the quarantine protocols. Scanning for foreign vessel signatures. Vest Reported. After a moment of processing, the AI continued, no unidentified craft. Detected within the solar system, no. Energy weapons discharge, no radiation. Signatures consistent with orbital bombardment. Keyless initiated a deep scan of Earth's surface, focusing the station's most powerful sensors on the major population centers. What he saw made his blood run cold with a sensation the VRN rarely experienced, genuine fear. The cities were empty. New York, Tokyo, Mumbai, Lagos, Sao Paulo, every major metropolitan center showed the same impossible reality, streets filled with vehicles that sat motionless with their doors hanging open, buildings with lights still burning in windows that framed empty rooms, parks where children's toys lay abandoned on grass that swayed in wind that touched no one. This cannot be accurate, Mira said, her voice taking on a crystalline quality that indicated severe stress. 8 billion humans do not simply vanish, but they had. Hughes expanded the scan to cover the entire planet from the frozen poles to the equatorial rainforests. The readings were consistent everywhere. No human biosignatures, no heat patterns, indicating large gatherings of people. The animals remained confused and wandering through human spaces they had never been allowed to enter. The plants continued their slow growth. Machines hummed with power from automated systems, but the humans were gone. Jorith activated the emergency beacon, a signal that would reach the Convergence Council within hours. Despite the vast distances involved, we must report this immediately. If something has the power to erase an entire species overnight, every world in the galaxy is at risk. Keltis barely heard him. He was too focused on the images streaming from the surface probes in every city on every continent humans had left. Messages, they were written on walls, carved into streets, displayed on digital screens that still glowed with battery power. The messages were in every human language, but they all said the same thing: we knew you were watching, we were watching back, we are not gone, we are ready. The words repeated everywhere like a mantra, a declaration, a warning. Keyless felt understanding dawn with the weight of a collapsing star. This was not an extinction event, this was not an attack. This was a plan executed with precision that suggested preparation. Spanning generations, Vest, Keltis said. Quietly scan the oceans, scan deep below the thermal layers where our routine monitoring does not penetrate. The AI processed the request without question, redirecting sensor arrays to pierce the dark waters that covered 70% of Earth's surface. What the scans revealed should have been impossible for a species barely capable of reaching their own moon. Beneath the waves, hidden in trenches that human science claimed were unexplorable, sat massive structures. They were not natural formations. The geometric precision, the energy signatures bleeding through layers of camouflage technology, the sheer scale of construction, all of it pointed to advanced engineering that rivaled anything the Convergence had achieved. Those are shipyards, Mira whispered, her crystalline form flickering with colors that indicated shock. They have been building ships, massive ships, right under our sensors. How Jorith demanded, their technology is primitive, they barely understand quantum mechanics, they should not be capable of this. Keyless understood now, and the understanding filled him with something that felt uncomfortably like admiration. we saw what they wanted us to see. They gave us a performance, while we watched their wars and their entertainment broadcasts and their stumbling space programs. They were building something else, something hidden, as if responding to his words. The ocean began to move, the monitors lit up with energy readings that climbed beyond safe measurement thresholds. The water itself seemed to boil as something massive stirred in the depths. The first ship broke the surface near the mid-Atlantic ridge, rising from an underwater canyon that humans claimed was too deep for exploration. It was enormous, easily 3 km from bow to stern, its hull of black material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Water cascaded off its surface in torrents as it climbed into the sky with impossible grace, defying gravity with technology that should not exist on a quarantined world. Then another ship emerged, and another. They rose from oceans across the planet, breaking through waves like ancient leviathans awakening from slumber. They emerged from ice at the poles, frozen water exploding into steam as massive vessels pushed upward. They lifted from desert sands and formations that suggested they had been buried there for decades, waiting for this moment. Keyless watched in stunned silence as the count climbed. 100 ships, 1,000, 10,000. The numbers kept rising as more and more vessels joined the armada forming in Earth's atmosphere. They moved with synchronized precision, taking positions that created a perfect sphere around their home world. Final count, VES announced, and for the first time in its existence, the AI's voice carried something that sounded like awe. 500,000 vessels, all human in origin, all armed with weapon systems I cannot fully identify. They have surrounded their entire planet. The observation station, hidden beyond the moon, suddenly felt very small and very exposed. Keyless realized with crystal clarity that humanity had known about them all along. Every monitoring device, every sensor array, every observation protocol, the humans had detected them all and had chosen to leave them operational. They had wanted to be watched. They had wanted the galaxy to believe they were weak. Jorth stood frozen, his warrior instincts recognizing a trap that had been centuries in the making. Myra's crystalline form had gone completely dark, overwhelmed by the implications. Even Vest remained silent, processing data that contradicted every assessment the Convergence had made about human capabilities. Keyleth stared at the sphere of ships that now surrounded Earth like a shell of dark metal, and he understood that everything was about to change. Humanity had not vanished. They had transformed, and they had done it in secret, right under the noses of 400 advanced species who had thought themselves so much wiser. The quarantine was over, not because the Convergence had decided humanity was ready, but because humanity had decided they were done waiting. The question now was what they intended to do with the power they had built in silence and shadow, and whether the galaxy was ready for the answer. The reckoning, the communication request arrived exactly 3 hours after the fleet's emergence, timed with a precision that suggested careful planning. Keyless stared at the incoming signal indicator, his fingers hovering over the acceptance control. In 400 years of observation duty, he had never received a direct transmission from a quarantine species. The protocols did not even have provisions for such an event. Should we respond? Mira asked. her crystalline form still dim with shock. The Convergence Council has not yet replied to our emergency transmission. They are giving us a choice, Jorith observed, his tactical mind analyzing the situation with warrior pragmatism. They could have destroyed the station at any moment. Instead, they asked permission to speak. That tells us something about their intentions. Keyless made his decision and accepted the transmission. Holographic display flickered to life. And for the first time in nearly 2 centuries of observation, he found himself looking at a human face that was looking directly back at him. She was a woman of middle years by human standards, her dark hair streaked with silver and pulled back in a practical style. Her skin showed the lines of someone who had spent years bearing responsibility, and her eyes carried an intelligence that made Keltis uncomfortable. She wore a uniform of deep blue with insignia he did not recognize, though the military bearing was unmistakable across any culture. Observer Keltis of the Vannan people, the woman said, speaking in perfect Convergence standard, a language that Earth should not even know existed. My name is Fleet Commander Sarah Morrison of the United Earth Defense Initiative. I apologize for the dramatic nature of our introduction, but we felt it was necessary to make our position absolutely clear. Keyless found his voice, though it felt strange to speak directly to someone he had only ever observed from a distance. Commander Morrison, I must ask the obvious question. Where are your people? 8 billion humans have disappeared from Earth's surface. Sarah smiled, and it was not an expression of joy. It was the smile of someone who had won a game that others did not know they were playing. My people are exactly where they have always been. Observer, they are here with me aboard these vessels and in facilities throughout our solar system. We evacuated Earth 72 hours ago as the final phase of a plan we began implementing 180 years ago. Impossible, Mira interjected, her crystalline voice sharp with disbelief. You evacuated 8 billion individuals in 3 days. The logistics alone would require technology far beyond what we have observed in your civilization. You observed what we showed you, Sarah replied calmly. We have been aware of your surveillance since the year 2168 by our calendar. A mining operation on our moon detected electromagnetic anomalies that did not match any known natural phenomena. It took us 7 years to locate your observation posts and understand their purpose. By 2175 we had intercepted enough of your communications to learn about the Convergence Council and the quarantine protocols. Keltis felt his world tilting as the implications crashed over him. You have known for 180 years and you said nothing. We said nothing because we understood what discovery would mean, Sarah continued, her voice hardening. We studied every piece of data we could intercept from your transmissions. We learned about the integration protocols. We learned about the cultural reformation programs designed to make new species compatible with convergent standards. We learned about what happened to the Zel-3 when they resisted assimilation. Observation deck fell silent. The Zel-3 extinction was not common knowledge, buried in classified archives that required high clearance to access. The fact that humanity had uncovered that dark chapter in Convergence history was deeply troubling. Sarah leaned forward, her expression intense. We learned that The convergence does not invite equals. It absorbs subordinates. It takes young civilizations and reshapes them into something that serves the greater collective, erasing what makes them unique in the process. We decided that Earth would not follow that path, so you hid, Jorth said, his voice rumbling with something that might have been respect. You maintained the illusion of a primitive civilization while building this fleet in secret for 180 years. Every human on Earth participated in the greatest deception in our history, Sarah confirmed. We continued broadcasting our television and radio signals. We maintained our visible space program. With its primitive chemical rockets, we fought carefully orchestrated conflicts that made us appear divided and violent. Every aspect of human civilization that you observed was theater designed to convince you that we were centuries away from readiness. Keyless thought of all the reports he had filed, all the assessments predicting humanity's slow progress toward eventual convergence. Membership, every single one had been based on lies. What were you really doing building? Sarah said simply, we established underwater facilities and ocean trenches that your sensors could not penetrate. We constructed shipyards beneath polar ice where thermal signatures would be masked by natural variations. We hollowed out mountains and dug cities underground where millions of our people worked in secret. We developed technologies based on principles we intercepted from your own communications, then pushed beyond what even you have achieved. She gestured to something off-screen, and the holographic display split to show images of vast underground complexes. Keyless saw manufacturing facilities that stretched for Killam, hydroponic farms feeding millions, fusion reactors providing unlimited power, and assembly lines producing the black ships that now surrounded Earth. Every generation of humans born after 2175 grew up knowing about the convergence. Sarah continued. They were educated in hidden schools, trained in secret facilities, and prepared for the day when we would reveal ourselves. We called it the emergence. Today is that day. Vess, who had been silently processing data, spoke. For the first time since the transmission began, Commander Morrison, analysis of your fleet suggests technological capabilities that exceed convergence standards in several key areas. Specifically, your propulsion systems and energy weapons demonstrate principles that our scientists consider theoretically impossible. How did a quarantine species achieve this? Sarah smile returned sharp and proud. Because we were not bound by your assumptions. Observer AI. We approached problems from directions you never considered because you believed you already had the answers. While the convergence refined existing technologies, we had to invent entirely new ones. Necessity and desperation are powerful motivators for innovation. Jorth, ever the warrior, asked the question that had been hanging in the air since the fleet appeared. What do you want, Commander? You have revealed yourselves in a display of force that cannot be ignored. The Convergence Council will respond to this. What happens next depends on your intentions. Sarah's expression became serious, all traces of satisfaction vanishing. What we want is simple. Observer Jorth, we want recognition. We want a seat at the Convergence Council as equals, not as primitives to be reformed and absorbed. We want the right to maintain our culture, our identity, and our independence. We want what every Sentient species deserves the freedom to chart our own course among the stars. And if the convergence refuses, Mira asked quietly, then we will chart that course alone, Sarah replied without hesitation. This fleet represents only a portion of our capabilities. We have shipyards in the asteroid belt producing more vessels every day. We have colonies throughout our solar system, each one a fortress that could withstand a siege. For decades, we have weapons that could sterilize worlds if we chose to use them. We do not want war, observer Mira, but we are prepared for it in ways that the convergence cannot imagine. Keyless absorbed this declaration, understanding the careful balance Sarah was striking. She was demonstrating strength while offering peace, showing the sword while extending an open hand. It was a diplomatic dance that showed sophistication. The convergence had not credited humanity with possessing. The Council will not appreciate being presented with an ultimatum. Keyless warned, there are species in the convergence who will view your emergence as a threat that must be eliminated. We know, Sarah acknowledged. We have studied your politics as carefully as your technology. We know about the Krothan war fleets and the Taline trade networks and the VRN Observation Corps. We know which species will support us and which will oppose us. We have prepared diplomatic proposals for 17 different scenarios based on the Council's likely responses. She paused, her gaze settling on Keyless with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. But we also know that the convergence values stability above all else. A war with humanity would be costly, not just in ships and lives, but in the message it would send to every other quarantined species in the galaxy. How many other worlds are watching their skies right now, wondering if they too could break free from observation? How many civilizations might find inspiration in our example? It was a threat wrapped in reason, and Keyless recognized its effectiveness immediately. The convergence had maintained order through the belief that resistance was futile, that young species had no choice but to accept integration on the Council's terms. Humanity had shattered that belief. Their success would echo across the galaxy, potentially destabilizing the entire system of quarantines and observations that had existed for millennia. A notification chimed, indicating an incoming transmission from the Convergence Council. The emergency session had concluded, and they were ready to respond to the human emergence. Keyleth looked at Sarah's face on the display and saw confidence mixed with cautious hope. She had gambled everything on this moment. Commander Morrison, Keltis said slowly, I believe your transmission to the Council will be accepted. What you have accomplished here is unprecedented, and while many will see it as a threat, others will recognize it for what it truly is, proof that humanity has earned its place among the stars through determination and ingenuity. Thank you, Observer Keyless, Sarah replied, and for the first time her expression softened with genuine emotion. I hope you understand that this was never personal. We respect the convergence and what it has accomplished. We simply refuse to surrender who we are in order to join it. The transmission ended, leaving the observation deck in thoughtful silence. Keyless looked at the sphere of human ships surrounding Earth and felt history shifting beneath him like continental plates grinding against each other. Everything would be different now. The age of passive observation and Controlled integration was ending, replaced by something new and unpredictable. 3 weeks later, after tense negotiations that Keltis monitored with fascination, the Convergence Council issued its decision: humanity would be granted provisional membership with full cultural autonomy, a concession that had never been offered to any species in recorded history. The vote had been close and bitter. Arguments had divided the council, but pragmatism ultimately prevailed over tradition. The cost of war with humanity was deemed too high, and the risk of inspiring other quarantine species to follow their example too dangerous. Sarah Morrison attended the council session via holographic transmission, representing her entire species before 400 others. She stood tall and spoke with eloquence, outlining humanity's vision for a convergence that celebrated diversity rather than enforced conformity. Some species listened with open hostility, others with grudging respect, but all of them listened because humanity had made it impossible to ignore them. Keylethus watched from his observation post as the human fleet began to disperse, some ships returning to Earth while others ventured outward to establish formal diplomatic relations with member species. The planet below came alive again as 8 billion humans returned to their home world, no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be less than they were. In his 400 years of service, Keyleth had witnessed the rise of many civilizations, but he had never seen one that seized its own destiny with such audacity and careful planning. Humanity had taught the galaxy a lesson that would not be forgotten. Underestimation was a mistake that even ancient and powerful civilizations could make, and determination, creativity, and unity could overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. As Earth's lights flickered back to life across the dark continents, Keltis permitted himself a feeling that observation protocols discouraged admiration. Humanity had earned their place among the stars, not by permission but by right of achievement, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again.